So hi guys, Jonathan Grimm here for Guitar Interactive Magazine, and we are sitting here with the immensely talented Philip Sayce. How are you doing today?
Well, I feel good now. Thank you for that intro.
Well, thank you for coming back to the UK. It's been far too long, Philip. Why is it taking so long to get you back here?
You know what? Just one thing or another, and just looking for an opportunity to come back, and the door opened up. And so, it's a crazy business. It's really hard to always find the right way to go, but I'm thankful for the opportunity to be here now. And making absolutely the most of it. Really thankful.
Absolutely. Well, we can see from the clips that have been going up online, the fans are very thankful as well. How's this UK tour been for you?
It's been healing on many levels. It's been inspiring. It's something that I feel, just as I was saying a minute ago, just deeply grateful for. Yeah. It's a very special experience and one that I'll carry with me.
Absolutely.
I think just trying to stay in the moment, be here for today, because we don't know what's going to happen, and living those last three years or whatever through the COVID time, I didn't know if there'd ever be a chance to get out and play again. So just stay in the moment and just do the very best I can today.
Absolutely. Now, UK's got a very special place in your heart. Obviously, you were born here.
Yeah.
Does that still resonate with you, coming back to the UK, knowing that you're from here?
It sure does. There's it feels familiar somehow. Even though I don't live here, I don't know the names of every street, I don't know all the communities, but there's a something in my soul, in my blood that I recognize somehow, maybe generationally, like through my parents, grandparents, etc., aunts and uncles. Saw a cousin yesterday, and there's just something about it that I recognize, and it feels comfortable.
Absolutely. Now, the Wolves are coming. It is coming in February, just in a couple of months' time. Yeah. I've been lucky enough to get to hear it. It's fantastic.
Oh, right on.
We will talk about it. Obviously, the main thing the guys have got to do is listen to the fucker, because that's much better than discussing all the finer details. But just to give the fans a little insight while they're waiting on getting to hear it, when did the process for this record begin?
Well, first of all, thank you for listening to it. It began during the pandemic.
Yeah.
So I had released an album called Spirit Rising, right sort of at the onset of the pandemic, so in 2020. And there wasn't an opportunity to really do any promotion for it, obviously.
Sure.
And the album came out, and it's been streaming really well. I'm excited about it. But, I was at home for over a year or more, I think, as we all were, trying to figure out what the fuck are we going to do, And so I really took the time to really focus on practicing very hard every day, vocals, guitars. I'd go out in the car and practice my vocal exercises every day, and then writing. And I just did that every day. Not like I forced myself to do it, I wanted to.
Yeah.
Because it was wide open space, wide open. So just took that time to practice and work on everything, work on the craft. And these songs started coming up, and I didn't know, what am I going to do with these? I don't know. Maybe I'll record them, and maybe I won't ever be able to play live again. I don't know, but here they are. And I just started going in the studio in Los Angeles with my friend Mark Rains, who is a phenomenal engineer and producer and great guy. And Michael Leisure came in and played drums with me. It was just the three of us. So I'd written these songs, and we just tracked them live off the floor. We do like 2 or 3 at a time, because I didn't have, not working. I didn't have a lot of money, right? You can't just go in for a month.
Of course, yeah.
So we made the most out of like 2 or 3 days, and sometimes we'd get 2 songs, and then other times we'd hear a song back and go, maybe not that one, or I'd go home and rewrite it, and we'd go back a month later. We'd have our masks on and, sort of be keeping a distance, but being careful.
Just to add to the vibe,
Oh, yeah, it was kind of lonely. It was just, and most of the time it was just Mark Rains and myself. And then I had some other friends play on it remotely, but ultimately the stuff was pretty live off the floor that we did do. And my friend Brian Moncars in Toronto mixed most of the record and a lot of the record, and it just kind of came together in that kind of way, bits and pieces.
I think the thing for me is, and this is hopefully, the fans are going to feel that same way, but it's one of these ones when you've got such expectation on a new record from an artist you really love, you want some of the stuff that you're expecting, but you want something a little bit more as well, and I think you've got that balance perfect with this. Is that something that you consider when writing, or is it just about what's going to be moving you in that moment?
Thanks, right, yeah. I think really it's about, like what I was saying a moment ago too, just staying present in the moment for that particular day. And I think the vibes were pretty heavy, right, during the pandemic. So I think just trying to capture a lot about what I was feeling, a lot about what I was experiencing, as a way to heal through that time.
Yeah.
I was frustrated, I was angry, I was sad, I was scared. You know, all the things.
Of course.
What is this going to be? And so I just tried to channel that into into the songs. And not to mention, there were a lot of things changing socially as well. A lot of social uprising, much needed, and things. You know, it was very, very intense. And living in Los Angeles, we saw a lot of it firsthand. And I mean, everywhere in the world, we're seeing it firsthand.
Yeah, of course.
So I just tried to put as much of that into the music as possible.
Well, for me, you know, Blackbirds Fly Free and Intuition are the two. A couple of weeks in, I'm only a couple of weeks into it, but those are the two big standouts for me. Can you talk a little bit about with Blackbirds Fly Free, where that one began?
Yeah, so Blackbirds is actually a song that I've had for a while, and I wrote it with Marty Fredrickson, who is a brilliant, amazing writer.
Yeah.
We've known each other a long time, and I've always wanted to put that on a record.
Brilliant.
And yeah, we just tried it. It felt like, well, if this is going to be the last thing that I get to record, I'm just going to put it on there anyway. So, so yeah, the song really means a lot. Blackbirds Fly Alone is really about, like, you know, sometimes you're you're on your own. Sometimes there's no one you can look to, and there's a lot of people will close the door on you and things like that, and so you just got to believe in yourself. And sometimes you're in a relationship with someone and you kind of know that, man, I don't know, this is not the right thing, but do I stay in this because I'm afraid of making a change?
Sure.
Or do I be honest about what's happening here? And so a lot of ways, some business relationships have been like that, and I think the line is, you and I don't see eye to eye. This I've always known. I knew in time that we would say goodbye because blackbirds fly alone. And so it's sort of, you know, that kind of feeling like, in this case, I'm the blackbird, I got to fly alone on this.
Of course.
And that song just really means a lot to me on a lot of levels, and I love Marty's writing. I think he's one of the best out there in the rock music area. Yeah,
it's a great track, and that outro solo, my God, man, it just took me to a whole other place. Now that's something that you do a lot. Obviously, you know, there's so much improvisation in what you do, but you know, it's $1 million question. But what is the key to finding that through line with an improvised solo, and it not just being just, you know, random nonsense? It always feels like you've got something to say every time you play it, and that, I mean, it's a perfect example in that track.
Oh, thank you. Well, I think it's really about, again, being in the moment and doing the very best that I can on this particular day.
Yeah.
And really trying to play with what I feel. I'm not really a player that learned the guitar through scales and all that kind of thing. I'm more about sound and colors and trying to emote through that. And so I think, you know, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's always like perfect execution, but sometimes something that's really raw and super honest for me is more exciting than something that is absolutely, like, you know, perfect and practiced out 1 million times. I really try to go for something spontaneous, and I think all my influences kind of come from that place too. And so, yeah, I think just really just trying to not think my way through it, feel my way through it.
Absolutely. Now, for these shows, what's your rig been like?
The guitar rig?
Yes.
It's been a cornucopia of excitement. That's why we were a few minutes running late for this interview, because I was swapping an amp out and trying to fix a wah-wah pedal, and it just... So I brought over a couple of amps, amp heads that are worked on by my friend Tommy Cougar in Sweden. We've been working together for a long time.
Sure.
And I think he's just about the best amp for what I'm looking for, the best amp technician, designer on the planet. And so I brought one amp that he had built that we call the travel amp.
Okay.
And it's like a 100-watt head, but it fits in a suitcase, so it's small.
Fantastic.
But I think it took a tumble on the way over here, and it's not working quite right. But it's also it sometimes can overpower the room. So tonight we're using a 50. It's actually less than 50-watt head, 2 6L6 tubes in it. It's sort of like a super reverb head or something like that, 35 or 40 watts, not very loud. And I'm running it through a 212 cabinet that the guys from Pedal Pond were kind enough to lend me.
Okay.
Chris and Paul over there, and so they loaned me a 212 cab for the tour and some other things. So really just one amp tonight.
Guitars?
I brought only 2 guitars. Big Daddy is a 1963 Stratocaster, and I also brought a Paul Reed Smith Silver Sky.
It's you know, I'm going to talk about the Silver Sky in just a second, but the magic of the pre-CBS Strats, You know, what for you? What is the mojo in these instruments?
Well, I think each one is a little bit different. You know, they were made by hand. They weren't necessarily this kind of conveyor belt cookie cutter approach. Sure. How many can we make this month? Well, I'm sure they were at that time, but it's a very different scale.
Yeah.
From something 60 years ago to now. Not all of them have the deliciousness. And it also depends what you're looking for as an individual. But when you come across them, there's a resonance, there's a richness, a warmth to the tone.
Yeah.
Even when they're not plugged in, you just hear the way the wood kind of, there's something that happens through the instrument. And I think the resonance. And it feels different to me. There's something really cool about them.
It's interesting you talking on the field, because people will talk about the resonance, and of course, I'm thinking the Spinal Tap, of course.
Yeah, totally.
but it's a real thing, obviously. But people will focus, I think, sonically, resonance. But with these old guitars, there's a resonance against your body as well, isn't there, that people don't always notice? And of course, when you're talking about that, just hearing it acoustically, is that something that you instinctively feel as you're playing? You actually feel that resonance against your body, and that's it sort of speaking to you in a way?
Sure, absolutely. I like that you described it that way. Yeah, I agree with you on that. And I think there's something interactive. It's very interactive. And that can happen with a new guitar as well. And I think that's what I've been finding happening with the Paul Reed Smith Silver Sky. I'm pretty blown away by those guitars. I mean, I think, I'm not necessarily only playing vintage guitars, but I do get pulled to them when you find a good one. I mean, they just are haunting. They just have a thing. And
when did you get turned on to these PRSs then?
So a friend of mine, Glenn in Austin, Texas, he got in touch with me and said, "Hey man, have you tried these?" And I said, "No, I heard they're good, but no, I'm good. I'm okay." He goes, "Man, I think you should try them." And so I went to the Paul Reed Smith showroom in Burbank, in Los Angeles, and they had a bunch there, and I met with their artist rep there, who was wonderful, Win, and I played a few. I brought an amp with me, and I was absolutely astounded. I was like, "Are you kidding me?" Like, wow.
Have you changed anything out then? Swapped
No.
out any pickups? So
Nope.
nothing at all?
Just left it.
I like how you haven't, and John Mayer, although it's his signature guitar, he's already changed just about everything on it and changed the frets. And
He did. I just kind of left it. I thought, that's cool. It's set up completely different from my Fenders, Strats. But it's the thing's great. I'm not trying to get it to replace my pre-CBS Strats.
Yeah.
That's not what
it's a new color. It's a new color.
Yeah. And I've been repeating this over and over, but really what it feels like is it's sort of like a 60s GTO muscle car. Like, that sound is more like the old Strat.
It looks great on you as well, because you associate you so much with these old guitars, and the paint's all stripped off. It's a good look with this nice pristine Silver Sky.
Well,
do you think maybe a custom color for you down the line might be in order?
We'll see. The one that I have right now is really like. It's good. I'm not thinking about the color too much. I went through a bunch of them and played them. And
well, you're a stylish guy, you know what I mean. So
well, sometimes, but not all the time. But the black one just really stood out to me of all the ones I played. And I've got a white maple neck one and then a pink one at home, and they're all really a little different. And I'm thankful to have them.
Phil, when was the first time you were moved by music?
Wow, that's a great question. Certainly as a kid, my parents listened to the best. Just great music growing up. And so I'm going to say that it was Dire Straits, hearing the album Brothers in Arms at home. And, they would play that over and over. And I think Money for Nothing, the intro to that really hit me when I was a little kid, So that was, I think, where I was probably one of the first times I freaked out over music.
That's awesome. Now, an early live experience that I've heard you talk about before was seeing Eric Clapton. Now, as time has progressed, I totally remember as well when Clapton, you couldn't be any bigger. And I don't remember, we're both not old enough to remember the Clapton is God period, but we still do remember late 80s and 90s, and he was all over. He was so big.
Yeah.
These days, the more people seem to be talking more in this, he's overrated, or he's not quite this, he's that, because obviously guitar has moved in different directions with shred and what have you. Just for people that kind of feel that way on Clapton, just could you explain from your perspective why he was so great?
Well, I don't think I mean, I don't know if I've heard many people saying that he's overrated or what. I mean, like if that's what people are saying, then they got to check themselves because you know, this is a guy who's a master chef. He doesn't need to show all the cards, but if you look deeply in the catalog, this guy will cut you in half. You know, he is the phrasing, the way he makes that guitar sing. He can be as tough as he needs to be or as sweet as he needs to be. And one of the most melodious players of all time, and you know it's him instantly. And so I think that's a bit, I think it's a bit hard-headed to say that Eric Clapton's playing is overrated. Yeah. I think I'd like to see you sit in with Eric and let's see how it goes.
Absolutely.
You know,
absolutely.
I think it would be a bit, you know, it's easy to take shots at the guy who's one of the greatest of all time.
Absolutely.
So, but I think really some of those his vibrato, and his phrasing is unlike anybody else. He's a true artist, and I think as time goes on, you know, people will look back on his playing and they'll realize that he's the master brushstroke in his playing.
What kind of influence did Toronto clubs like the Silver Dollar Room and the Albert Hall have on your playing?
Oh, like playing at those.
Well, just experiencing shows there and then getting to play, what kind of influence did that whole scene have on you?
In Toronto?
Yes, in Toronto.
Oh, yeah. Well, the players in Toronto, I mean, I don't know if it's because the winters are long or whatever, but there's some killers up there, man. Yeah. Like real killers. And like vicious players and singers of all kinds. And so I think going out and being able to have access to seeing these players any night of the week and just sitting and watching them and then running home and trying to figure out what they were doing. And, I mean, it's how I met Jeff Healey, for crying out loud. I mean, he would just show up at a club and burn the place down. It's like, holy shit, that was Jeff Healey. And then there'd be somebody you'd never heard of that got up and played, and it was like, who the fuck was that? Like, so I think it's a very rich music scene. I'm thankful to have come up. And then you had, of course, all the touring artists. They would hit Toronto coming through. And, I remember shows seeing players like Coco Montoya. I got to see Albert Collins when I was a kid in Toronto at the El Macombo, like right in front of him. My mom took me at the front of the stage, and it's the best shit I've ever seen. Yeah, I mean. Now
you mentioned Jeff. You've played with a few different artists. Especially as you were coming up and coming into the scene. What is some of the advice from some of those guys that were on the road a little bit before you that stuck with you?
Oh man, the thing that I noticed is that, like, someone like Jeff never really told me how to play. Like, he wasn't micromanaging. He saw and recognized that I loved it, and I think he was pretty aware that I loved him too. I was in awe of him, but he didn't mess with me ever. He just gave me room to grow and kind of stretched me. Every night. Every night he would show me what time it was. He'd say, "Okay, you take one." And so I'd play for a while and be like, "Okay, good for you. Now I'm going to show you how it's done." And so, I think really he showed me the way by example. And I'll never forget what it felt like to stand next to him when he was in full flight. It was like, take your breath away.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I would have loved to have seen him live. It would have been incredible. I mean, obviously there's so much recorded stuff, but it's different being in the room with him. It
was freaky. I mean, I have goosebumps thinking about it now. It's not shit you learn from watching, some instructional video.
Well, it's pure expression, isn't it? Who's on your Mount Rushmore of pure expression? Is guitar players taking a to the side, any technical things, just guys that just move you with their playing?
The most, yeah. Well, certainly Jeff. We talk about Jeff Healey, Stevie Ray Vaughan for sure. Albert Collins for sure, and let's say Eric Clapton too, if we're saying 4 at the moment. But that's a short list. I mean that mountain would have about 20 names or more on it. But for this conversation, I mean Freddie King and Albert King, B.B. King, and many other players as well. But really, when we talk about Albert Collins, I still have that moment when I was staring up, looking at him playing, and it was supernatural.
Yeah.
He wasn't playing licks. He was playing things that were connected to the universe in a way that it was crazy.
So that's obviously been something that you've really knuckled down in terms of getting that channeling, of the wherever it comes from, that whole thing. What for you has been the key to doing that? You know, going from getting that thought, that feeling that you want to express, and channeling it through the instrument. I mean, again, another $1 million question, but is there something that you can work on to get better at that?
Oh my gosh, you know, I'm a student of music. I'm a student of the instrument. I'm always trying to get better, to be better today than I was yesterday. I'm just an eternal student. And so I think constantly hungry to learn more, and to just keep pushing, and to just to keep you know, how could I do this better? How could I refine this? How can I get deeper? And I think, like I was saying earlier, not thinking about it so much, but more feeling my way through it and trying to play some of my personal experiences in life through the music. You know, so if I'm trying to get something that I'm sad about, try to get that out through the playing, or something I'm very happy about. But it's really, I think that's really the approach to it, and maybe trying to play it a little bit differently each time too. I don't necessarily love the, you know, having it mapped out.
Absolutely, yeah. Now I know you need to get to the stage very soon. I'm really excited to see you play, of course. Just before I let you go, on Monday it's going to be Hendrix's 81st birthday.
Oh my gosh!
Wow. Now, you know, London was an important part for his career as well. Now, with bands like the Rolling Stones still releasing music, if we were to imagine that Hendrix hadn't died so young, where do you think his music would have gone?
You know what? I don't think that any of us could predict where he was going to go. None of us could have predicted what he did in the short time he was here.
Yeah.
But I think that he made the world such a better place in the short time he was here that maybe he would have continued to impact us culturally, certainly through art, emotionally, maybe even in the way we treat one another. So it may have been not only through music, but spiritually. I think he was so tapped into a higher power that I think obviously his musicianship would have continued to grow and expand stylistically in different areas, but I think he may have impacted people on a real human level, you know, the way we talk to one another and treat one another.
Absolutely. Well, Philip, thanks so much for taking some time, and have a great show tonight.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, man.
Cheers.